Welcome, and thank you for tuning into Kirb Appeal. That's right, Kirb Appeal, a limited series celebrating the 30-year history of everyone's favorite little right G, Kirby. I'm Alex Reynolds, and if there's one thing I love more than Kirby, it's detectives, PIs, gumshoes, dicks. So imagine my surprise when I found out that in 1993 and 1996, Club Nintendo, the German-language equivalent of Nintendo Power, issued two different stories starring a fast-talking, fedora and trench coat-wearing Kirby solving mysteries with his girl Friday King Dedede. This is Detective Kirby. Club Nintendo was first published in 1989, debuting with as few as 8 pages, but would eventually grow to at least 80 pages by the end of its 13-year run. What set the magazine apart from its American counterpart Nintendo Power was the inclusion of original comics, all drawn by Japanese manga artists and written by the German magazine editors. This would continue until 1999, when the original comic stopped in favor of a more serialized comic called N-Gang about a group of rad teenagers who would frequently encounter video game elements in their real lives and learn valuable lessons. Kirby appears among other Nintendo characters in the Endgame issues Freeze Frame and The Witch Laughs at Midnight. He was likely relegated to the background because when Kirby was given his own comics, things got weird. The first Detective Kirby comic was called Kirby and the Mystery of the Slime, drawn by Kenesada, writer unknown. The 16-page comic was released in March 1993 to June 1993, with each monthly issue of Club Nintendo containing 4 pages of the comic. Neither of the Club Nintendo Kirby comics got an English-language release. The best English-language translation for this issue comes in the form of a video by Swankybox featuring Ant Dude, and you can find a link to their video in the description. Thank you, boys.
How can I ever repay you?
Our story begins the way most detective stories do, with a dame. She comes to the office of Kirby, Dedede, and Bluefish, not a Kirby character, just a fish that is blue, and says she's having frequent nightmares about an intruder leaving mysterious slime in her home. Kirby haggles poorly over his fee and takes the case. Kirby and Dedede are immediately impressed with the size and luxury of their client's house, but their enjoyment is broken by a scream. Kirby finds a dead man in the basement, covered with slime. Just then, the police arrive and arrest Kirby on suspicion of being Jack the Slimer, a serial killer for whom this is apparently his signature. And that is the end of Issue 1. Issue 2. In prison, Kirby is kicked around like a soccer ball by other prisoners. At his trial, he's released on bail but told not to leave the country. Kirby, Dedede, and Bluefish go back to their client's mansion, but a housekeeper tells them their client left and flew to Monaco. Kirby, without a second thought, disobeys the judge's order and the three fly to Monaco. As soon as they land, Bluefish spots their client driving away. Kirby jumps onto the windshield of the car and causes their client to crash into a truck carrying pillows. The client is just dazed and walks away from the wreck, but an unconscious Detective Kirby is mistaken for a pillow and loaded into the truck and taken to Paris. That's a 10-hour drive, so these must be some pretty important pillows. Issue 3. The truck happens to make its delivery to a hotel in Paris, which happens to be hosting the Bioslime Congress. Kirby disguises himself as a pumpkin and eavesdrops on the meeting. One man says that they have sent an ultimatum to the Pentagon, demanding 50 million sparkling stars by noon the next day, or else they will drown New York City in a radioactive slime. At that point, the entire room decides it's time to eat the pumpkin, and Kirby is discovered. He gets sat on by this guy, wrapped up in a cardboard box, and sent to a place called Slime Paradise in the hope that the hungry creatures there will eat him. He gets there, and what I can only assume is a Poppy Brothers tells Kirby to inhale a koozer, and by doing so, he gains the ability to fly. This is not canonically correct. But with this new ability, Kirby in record time flies back to his client's mansion, picking up Dedede and Bluefish on the way, and this time they find a door marked Danger. End of Issue 3. Issue 4. The first thing Kirby finds is a costume on a mannequin that looks like their client. Behind another door is a giant slime-producing machine and a mysterious man. Kirby interrogates him until he says he didn't want to produce slime, but he was doing it for someone else, and that he disguised himself as their client to frame Kirby. He almost immediately does a heel turn and tries to escape, saying he will make slime somewhere else, and rides away on a tricycle. Kirby, Dedede, and Bluefish chase after him on a service cart, and they all fall into a hole that apparently leads to Nintendo World. Now, it's hard to know 100% if this is due to something being lost in translation or if the end is just this bonkers, but here's how it happens. Kirby and Dedede catch up to the mysterious man, and he says Bluefish made him do it. Bluefish unzips himself and reveals that he was Kirby all along. Kirby unzips himself and reveals he was Dedede all along. The other Nintendo characters wonder who Dedede is, then, and the comic asks the reader who you think it is. The answer is never given. Instead, Kirby says he did all this to draw people's attention to muesli cereal. After that, the whole cast has a giant Christmas feast with Santa watching from the window. Santa breaks the fourth wall to say this was a really weird comic and what stupid things can you come up with? As he walks away into the night, Kirby and DDD notice a fluffy bunny tail under his coat and determine that no one is who they say they are. The only recognizable characters from Kirby are Koozer and Poppy Brothers Jr., though other video game characters do appear, such as Mario from Super Mario Bros., Donkey Kong Jr. from Donkey Kong Jr., Pac-Man and Inky from Pac-Man, X from Mega Man X, Plock from Plock, Arrow from Arrow the Acrobat, Dizzy Devil and Hampton J. Pig from Tiny Toon Adventures, and possibly Pit from Kid Icarus. While the comic does lean into some adult detective noir themes such as murder and Kirby being framed and sent to prison, the whole thing does maintain a very lighthearted and fun atmosphere. It was meant to be a take on Dick Tracy, and the tone matches pretty perfectly, while also maintaining the irreverent anything-is-possible mechanic of Kirby. Kirby does appear as a side character in some of the subsequent, more popular Super Mario comics that Club Nintendo wrote, including one that same year that saw him as a functional toaster. But Detective Kirby would not return to the pages of Club Nintendo for another 3 years. It's hard to know for sure what happened to him during that time, but it couldn't have been good. Submitted for your approval, this is Kirby's Biggest Case. Kirby's Biggest Case was drawn by uncredited Japanese artists employed by Workhouse Co. Ltd. in Tokyo and written by Cloud M. Moyes, the man behind many SNES game German language localizations, including Secret of Mana, who chose to take very heavy liberties with the Kirby source material. According to a German-language interview with the Classic Zone, Moyes thought Kirby was a cool game, and despite selling poorly in Germany, he considered it innovative and versatile. But he also said, ribbingly, that he disliked Kirby creator Masahiro Sakurai and wanted to get even with him by turning Kirby into a freak. And boy did he. This English-language translation of Kirby's Biggest Case was provided by Kirby's Rainbow Resort. Our story begins on a slow day for Detective Kirby and DDD. He thumbs through a magazine called Playball. They're interrupted by a new female client who Kirby ogles like a Tex Avery wolf, and who tells them about her father, Dr. Mainhold, the inventor of a machine that lets video game characters travel to and from the real world. But recently his laboratory burned down, seemingly with him in it, and the machine went missing. Their client, Kat, doesn't believe her father is dead and wants Kirby to investigate. He agrees, and they set a meeting at the Bluefish Bar. They travel to the meeting place after Kirby refuses to take off his sunglasses and crashes their car, but Kat is not there. This introduces Detective Kirby's catchphrase, "I've deduced blank," typically the obvious. This is a really cute mechanic and one that comes up over and over again, like Kirby's Just One More Thing.
Just one more thing.
Just one more thing.
Oh, one more thing, sir.
They decide to go to Kat's estate to look for her there, and they find a table for 4 with a note that says "Bon appetit, Kirby," and sit down expecting a fancy meal. Instead, the lights go out. When they come back up, Kat's dead body is propped up in one of the chairs, and it is grisly, even by adult graphic novel standards. They soon hear police sirens, like in The Mystery of the Slime, but this time they escape before being framed. And here, Kirby jokes that none of them wear shoes, adding another drop in the bucket of the Kirby's feet debate. We quickly cut away to someone who looks an awful lot like Nightmare, marveling at a giant N64 and talking to Mr. Shine about his nefarious plans to bring all the video game baddies to life. Meanwhile, Kirby and the gang track down Dr. Mainhold's closest associate to a golf club, and Kirby disguises himself as the love child of Cool Spot and Julius Pringle to interrogate him. Without getting any information, Kirby is hit with a golf ball and fever dreams an advertisement for Kirby's Dream Course. He wakes up in the basement of a farmhouse, escapes through a chimney, and lands in manure. He frightens picnickers and eats their food. After Kirby returns home with DDD and showers, we meet Kirby's wife, Susie. She berates him for never taking out the garbage and asks him to look after her pets while she goes bowling. These pets are Rick, Coo, and Kind from Kirby's Dream Land 2, and DDD says they'll be useful. They use the animal friends to infiltrate Dr. Huber's office to continue Kirby's interrogation. Important to point out that in this panel, the man is definitely playing Avalanche. They're told Dr. Huber has been out of town. After following his trail, they charter a boat to an island called Bala Bala, where Huber reportedly went. Along the way, they are kidnapped by pirates, and Kirby has another fever dream, this time about Kirby's avalanche. When Kirby wakes up, he deduces that the ship is sinking and swims to shore, where he meets Lalala, Lololo, and other creatures saying video game monsters have been terrorizing them and that they always come from the island's volcano. Meanwhile, inside the volcano, DDD is placed into a machine that looks like a Game Boy and is possessed into defeating Kirby for the mysterious character who looks more like Iggy Pop than Nightmare all of a sudden. While scaling the volcano, Kirby falls, screams shit, but is caught by Coo the Owl and taken to the secret lair's entrance. But then they are both caught by a first-gen Donkey Kong and taken to the Nightmare Man, who is revealed to be Dr. Huber, but who says he might not be Dr. Huber, but in either case wants to use video game baddies to take over the world. He then puts Kirby into his Game Boy machine with the evil DDD, and this turns into an advertisement for Kirby's Block Ball. This is where we see the Kirby series' only reference to Block World. That place was never named in-game nor in any promotional material. Meanwhile, the rest of the animal friends, La-La-La, Lo-Lo-Lo, and Bluefish all decide Kirby needs help and that they'll go to the volcano. Bluefish recruits other Bluefish, and they storm Huber's lab, rescuing Kirby. They soon discover Huber is wearing a mask and was in fact Dr. Mainhold all along. They berate him, arrest him, the volcano erupts, and Kirby tells the reader to buy Kirby Cool Games. The end. As for the roll call of recognizable Kirby characters in Kirby's Biggest Case, we of course have DDD, but also Togezo, Sparky, Cool Spook, Rick, Coo, Kine, Mr. Shine, Sword Knight, Lo-Lo-Lo, and La-La-La. Kirby's Biggest Case also introduced some original characters as well, such as Cat Annette, Captain Gorg, Puffy, who appears to be a yellow member of Lo-Lo-Lo and La-La-La's species, Dr. Huber, and this episode's MVP, Most Valuable Poyo, Susie. As my partner put it, an icon. From her signature female version of a video game character's hair bow, to her makeup and her free-floating high heels, she is beautiful and bizarre and a testament to how far off the rails this comic actually went, and we here at Kirb Appeal love her for it. And that's case closed on this special episode of Kirb Appeal. Thank you to John Bartman for the use of this episode's music tracks, and thank you for tuning in. Our next episode will be about Kirby's Star Stacker, so feel free to like and subscribe to get that in front of your eyeballs. As much as I don't want to be known on the internet, I don't have a release schedule. So until next time, this is Alex Reynolds reminding you to be kind, be brave, and see what stupid things you can come up with. Take care.